Hello and good evening. You're watching the news on Sansad TV. I'm Bhawna Nayar and these are the headlines tonight. World is in a state of crisis, says Prime Minister at the Voice of Global South Summit. Calls on developing countries to come together to deal with challenges. Two-day conference of All India presiding officers ends in Jaipur. 9 resolutions passed at the conference. Lok Sabha Speaker reiterates resolve to work with dedication for the welfare of the people. Situation on border with China stable, asserts Army Chief General Manoj Pandey, says both sides managed to resolve 5 of the 7 pending issues. Inflation down to 5.72% in December. Industrial production increases by 7.1% in November. And India wins 3-match ODI series against Sri Lanka. And some other important stories now that too made the headlines. Government invites online applications for new Jan Aushadhi Kendras in 651 districts, targets 10,000 such Kendras by March 2024. Food Safety and Standards Authority of India to notify comprehensive regulatory standards for basmati rice from August 1st. Bureau of Indian Standards conducts raids against 44 outlets for selling toys without valid BIS licenses. Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia says over 22 crore 20 lakh Ayushman cards issued under Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana so far. First Health Working Group meet in Kerala under India's G20 presidency from 18th to 20th January to promote traditional medicine, herbal tea and Ayurveda recipes. President, Vice President, Prime Minister and Home Minister pay tributes to Swami Vivekananda on his birth anniversary. Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar says winning confidence of voters is paramount for Election Commission of India. No point in celebrating largest festival of democracy if voters do not participate in a festive mood, stresses CEC. Delhi court denies bail to Shankar Mishra, calls his act of urinating on women co-passenger on Air India New York Delhi flight utterly disgusting and repulsive. In growing political embarrassment for the White House, US President Joe Biden aides find fresh batch of classified government records at a second location. And protest against Peruvian President Dina Boluarte, government leaves 48 people dead. And today's lead story, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the world is in a state of crisis and the developing countries should come together to tackle pressing global challenges. Addressing a virtual summit of leaders of the Global South hosted by India, Prime Minister Modi said it was difficult to predict how long this state of instability will last. Referring to challenges such as food and energy security triggered by the Ukraine conflict, terrorism and the climate change, the Prime Minister said the developing countries were feeling their impact, though they were not responsible for them.
We, the Global South, have the largest stakes in the future. 3/4 of humanity lives in our countries. We should also have equivalent voice. Hence, at the 8-decade-old model of global governance slowly changes, we should try to shape the emerging order. Excellencies, most of the global challenges have not been created by the Global South, but they affect us more. We have seen this in the impact of COVID pandemic, climate change, terrorism, and even the Ukraine conflict.
He said the Global South should no longer be excluded from the fruits of development and they must attempt to redesign global political and financial governance. The Global South largely refers to the developing countries, especially those in Asia, Africa and South America.
And our time is coming. The need of the hour is to identify simple, scalable, and sustainable solutions that can transform our societies and economies. With such an approach, we shall overcome the difficult challenges, whether it is poverty, universal health care, or building human capacities.
Moving ahead, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the government's aim is to take India among top 3 economies in the world. He asserted that this economic growth of the country will bring immense opportunities for our youth. Addressing the 26th National Youth Festival in Hubli, Karnataka today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that Yuva Shakti is the driving force of India. He stressed that this century is India's century and the century of India's youth, adding that global investors want to invest in India's youth. Prime Minister Modi said that from toys to tourism, defense to digital, the nation is making headlines across the world. The 26th edition of the National Youth Festival is being organized from 12th to 16th January at Hubli Dharawad in Karnataka. The day is held every year to mark the birth anniversary of Swami Vivekanand. Take a listen.
आज 21वीं सदी के जिस पड़ाव पर हम भारतीय पहुंचे हैं, हमारा भारत पहुंचा है, वो उपयुक्त समय सदियों के बाद आया है और इसकी सबसे बड़ी वजह है भारत का ये युवा सामर्थ्य, ये युवा शक्ति। आज भारत एक युवा देश है। दुनिया की बड़ी युवा आबादी हमारे देश में है, हिंदुस्तान में है।
Prime Minister Modi held a roadshow in Hubli ahead of inaugurating the National Youth Festival. He was accorded a warm welcome by an enthusiastic crowd that lined up both sides of the road. Standing on the running board of his moving car, Prime Minister Modi waved at the crowd. At some places, people also showered flower petals at his cavalcade passed through the stretch slowly. The next G20 summit presents a great opportunity for India to showcase many of its strengths and provide leadership to several challenges the world is facing. Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal has said today. Speaking after the India-US Trade Policy Forum meeting in Washington, Goyal said that India has requested the United States to expedite the issuance of business visas so that trade and investment and business does not suffer. He said that he found a very good resonance to India's request. Piyush Goyal co-chaired the India-US Trade Policy Forum meeting with United States Trade Representative Catherine Tai on Wednesday.
In a very, very open atmosphere, in a very transparent manner. And that's the beauty of the Trade Policy Forum. I'd like to compliment Ambassador Catherine Tai for her leadership on the US side and the openness with which we have been able to have discussions on the Trade Policy Forum. We've had about 6 important issues that emerge from the Trade Policy Forum concluded.
Our news now from upcoming elections in Tripura. The Election Commission said it is committed and duty-bound to conduct free, fair and inducement-free elections in Tripura. Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar said the poll panel has made all arrangements to allow voters to join the festival of democracy. He said if a voter faces any threat or intimidation on the day of polling, he or she can use C-Vigil app to inform the election authorities. Assembly elections in Tripura are due in February-March this year. The CEC said that each polling station will have a micro-observer to ensure free and fair elections. Tripura has 3,328 polling stations. He added that all political parties will have to inform the voter about criminal cases if any of their candidates has.
जो पोलिंग एजेंट्स हैं और जो कैंडिडेट्स हैं, ऐसा पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज ने कहा कि उनकी सुरक्षा को लेकर वो चिंतित रहते हैं। सभी को कहा गया है, डिस्ट्रिक्ट मजिस्ट्रेट्स एंड एसपीज को, कि उनकी सुरक्षा उनकी जिम्मेदारी है। लोकतंत्र में जो आगे बढ़ के हिस्सा ले रहा है राजनीतिक प्रक्रिया में, उसको सुरक्षा प्रदान करना उनका प्रथम दायित्व है और वो इसके लिए सजग है। उनको कहा कि आप सजग रहें और इसको प्रोवाइड करें।
And news now from economy. Retail inflation eased to one-year low of 5.72% in December 2022. This decrease was mainly due to the softening of food prices. Consumer price index-based retail inflation was 5.88% in November 2022 and 5.66% in December 2021. Food inflation was 4.19% in December compared to 4.67% in the previous month. Retail inflation, after remaining above RBI's comfortable level of 6% continuously since January 2022, declined to 5.88% in November and 5.72% in December. And look now at more news from across the nation. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman today said that India will take up developmental issues of the Global South at the meetings of the G20 countries, emphasizing that there should not be any first world or third world, but only one world having a common future. Addressing the ministerial session at the Global South Summit, Sitharaman said that India will use the G20 presidency to encourage collective solutions to deal with the numerous challenges facing the world. Union Minister Nitin Gadkari today said that Sri Lanka and Bangladesh have shown their keenness to import ethanol from India. The Minister of Road Transport and Highways said that he discussed about ethanol with the government of both the countries, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. The minister also said that in 15 days he has a meeting with Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, where a discussion would be made on making a policy for starting of ethanol pumps in the country. The Supreme Court on Thursday agreed to hear on January 20 a plea against the Bihar government's decision to conduct a caste census in the state. A bench of Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud and Justice P.S. Nasimha posted the matter for hearing on January 20. The top court was hearing a public interest litigation seeking to restrain the authorities from conducting the caste survey in the state. The fact-check unit of the Union Information and Broadcasting Ministry on Thursday busted around 6 YouTube channels for allegedly spreading false information in the country. In a 6-series Twitter thread, the PIB fact-check unit released several evidences to prove these channels' attempts to spread fake news. One labourer was killed and another is missing after a snow avalanche was reported in the popular hill station of Sonmarg in Jammu and Kashmir today. The avalanche was reportedly filmed near the Baltal in Sonmarg, which is located in the Gandarbal district in central Kashmir. A construction company found its 2 labourers missing after a rescue operation was launched and a body was found. The victim was identified as Sandeep, a resident of Kishtwar. Slipping into a very short break here, lots more coming up on the other side. You stay tuned to Sansad TV for more news.
In many of these stories, there are Sthala Puranas also, which are about Sthala Mahatya, which are stories about one particular sthal or place, very local, regional in character.
As you had mentioned about Sthal Puran, we have created a series on our app called Temple Tales, which talks about various temples in the countries and the history and the mythology and the stories behind the temple. So for example, you have Kashi Vishwanath, which has a story in Shiva Puran, which is about the origin, which is the Puranic story about Shiva Puran, how the Vishwarup Jyotirling came into existence. So all these we are calling it Temple Tales, which talks about the local tradition and local stories associated with these sthals.
Please join me today's episode of Itihasa on Sansad TV.
On the 1st of December 2022, India assumed the presidency of the G20 or Group of 20 Nations and will host the G20 summit in New Delhi on September 9 and 10 this year.
We are in our 75th year of our independence. We are entering into the stage of Amrit Kaal. We want to see ourselves as a Viksit Bharat by 2047. And at the same time, we have, in many senses, shown that we have been a resilient economy in the face of the COVID crisis.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching the news, and now let's get all the updates from the Russia-Ukraine war front. The Ukrainian military said this morning that Russian forces carried out 4 missile strikes, 23 airstrikes and 69 attacks from rocket salvo systems in the past 24 hours. Ukrainian army spokesperson said that along with Donetsk, attacks also hit settlements in easternmost Luhansk, northeastern Kharkiv, northeastern Sumy, southeastern Zaporizhzhia, southeastern Dnipropetrovsk and southern Kherson provinces. The head of Russia's private military firm Wagner said his forces had achieved the complete liberation of Soledar, killing around 500 pro-Ukrainian troops. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had mocked earlier Russian claims to control part of the town and said fighting continued. Ukraine has denied claims, saying Kyiv troops are holding out in fierce fighting for control of the eastern town in Soledar. Satellite images released on Wednesday showed the destruction caused by intense fighting around the neighboring towns of Soledar and Bakhmut on Ukraine's eastern front line. Images by private U.S. company Maxar Technologies captured burnt-out settlements in the mining town of Soledar and a field in Bakhmut scarred with shell craters. Russia has replaced its top commander in Ukraine again, putting Army Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov in charge of its forces in the conflict after facing several setbacks on the battlefield. Sergei Surovikin, the commander of Russia's forces in Ukraine for the past 3 months, will become Gerasimov's deputy along with 2 other generals. Russia's defense ministry said that the increase in the level of leadership of the special operation is linked to the expansion of the scale of the tasks at hand. A Russian attack caused an explosion in Kherson Maternity Center on Wednesday. Visuals show smoke rising from the building, blown-out windows and damaged walls. Kherson regional governor said that the explosion was caused by a shell launched by the enemy, damaging doctors' offices. He added that the staff and patients were left unscathed. Moving on to the news from across the globe now. Cost of living crisis has gained the top rating as the most severe global risk over the next 2 years due to conflict and geo-economic tensions, according to the Global Risk Report 2023 published by the World Economic Forum on Wednesday. The annual Global Risk Perception Survey of the WEF pulls together leading insights from over 1,200 experts, policymakers and industry leaders. Here's a report.
The Global Risk Report 2023, published by the World Economic Forum, lists the top 10 rankings of the most severe risk in the time frame of the next 2 years and the next decade. Respondents call the cost of living crisis a short-term risk that would peak within the next 2 years and ease off thereafter. Natural disasters and extreme weather events were considered the second most severe risk over the next 2 years. Geo-economic confrontation was ranked the third most severe risk over the next 2 years. The long-term global risks landscape is also dominated by deteriorating environmental risks. More specifically, climate and nature-related risks lead the top 10 risks by severity that are expected to manifest over the next decade. Conflict and geo-economic tensions have given rise to a series of deeply interconnected global risks. And energy and food shortages will continue to plague the world in the next 2 years, with the cost of living and debt servicing to rise sharply, said the report. The report warns if the international community fails to cooperate more effectively in the climate change mitigation and adaptation, the risk mentioned above will lead to continued global warming and ecosystem collapse in the next decade. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And Cricket Australia has informed that Australia's men's team has withdrawn from their one-day international series against Afghanistan in March following further restrictions on women's and girls' rights imposed by the Taliban. More details in our next report.
Afghanistan's Taliban-led administration last month imposed a ban on women attending universities. In protest against the decision, the Australia's men's team has pulled out of their ODI series against Afghanistan in March. Australia and Afghanistan were slated to play 3 ODIs in the United Arab Emirates, but Cricket Australia scrapped the series after extensive consultation with stakeholders, including the Australian government. Cricket Australia is committed to supporting growing the game for women and men around the world, including in Afghanistan, and will continue to engage with the Afghanistan Cricket Board in anticipation of improved conditions for women and girls in the country. The series formed part of the International Cricket Council's Super League, where the top 8 teams automatically qualify for the 2023 World Cup. Australia have already qualified for the tournament. Afghanistan remained the only ICC full member nation of without a women's team. They have continued to appear at ICC events since the Taliban takeover, however, and faced Australia during last year's 2020 World Cup. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And news now from other parts of the world. The World Health Organization has declared an end to the outbreak of the Ebola virus in Uganda that emerged late last year and claimed the lives of 55 people. The Minister of Health of Uganda said that the Ebola Sudan virus outbreak in the country has ended after no new case was reported over 42 days. WHO requires that for a country to be declared Ebola-free, it should spend 42 days to 21 days incubation cycles of the virus without any new cases reported. Value of Egypt's currency plummeted to a record low against the US dollar as the country continues to battle surging inflation. Decisions in recent months by the country's central bank to raise the main interest rate and devalue the Egyptian pound have set off an economic shock that has affected millions of residents. At least 12 people have died since Monday after clashes erupted in southern Peru over demands for early elections and the release of jailed former President Pedro Castillo. The dead included 2 teenagers. The latest casualties take the death toll from anti-government clashes with security forces to 34 since the protests began in early December. US flights were slowly beginning to resume departures and a ground stop was lifted after the Federal Aviation Administration scrambled to fix a system outage on Wednesday that had forced to a halt of all US departing flights. US officials said that they had so far found no evidence of a cyber attack. More than 5,400 flights were delayed and 900 cancelled according to the FlightAware website. Sri Lanka's former President Maithripala Sirisena was on Thursday ordered to pay 100 million Sri Lankan rupees as compensation to victims of the 2019 Easter attack. A 7-member bench of the Supreme Court found him guilty of negligence in preventing the country's one of the worst terror strikes despite having credible information of an imminent attack. And let's now see what's happening in the world of sports. KL Rahul makes a patient 64 not out to guide India to a 4-wicket win against Sri Lanka in the second ODI at Eden Gardens, Kolkata. India will win 3-match series with a game to spare. Left-arm Chinaman bowler Kuldeep Yadav and pacer Mohammad Siraj were the star bowlers for India. Kuldeep took 3 wickets for 51 and broke the back of the Lankan middle order. Siraj also took 3 wickets. HS Pranoy dishes out another splendid show to progress to the men's singles quarterfinals of the Malaysia's Open Badminton Tournament. Beats Indonesia's Chico Duia Doyo 21-9, 15-21, 21-16. India seek first podium finish in 48 years at the FIH Men's Hockey World Cup beginning tomorrow, set to face Spain on Friday. Novak Djokovic drawn to play 75th ranked Spain's Roberto Carballes Baena on his return to the Australian Open. The Serbian was deported from Australia a year ago, is bidding for a 10th Melbourne title. And with that, it's a wrap of today's bulletin. Keep watching Sansad TV for all the latest news and updates. Good night. Namaskar.